Hey guys, and welcome back. I'm Nams, and this is my review of Dragon's Crown for PS Vita. Like with all my normal reviews, the graphics, sound, and gameplay will be separately scored, and then an overall score, which is not an average, will be given at the end of the review, which reflects my overall opinion of the game. So let's not beat around the bush here. Dragon's Crown is gorgeous. It is without exception the best looking 2D game I've ever seen in my entire life. Character sprites are sharp, crisp, and very well animated when moving. Regular enemies and boss enemies are extremely well drawn and pleasing to look at as well. The quasi-animated art during the cutscenes is also masterfully drawn and is really jaw-dropping to see in motion. The stellar contrast of the Vita's OLED screen also greatly complements the game, with colors really popping out of the screen. Quite literally, the only possible downside I can mention about the game's visuals is the frame rate, which can get a little dodgy with 4 players on the screen and lots of effects and spells going off at the same time. But for the most part, the game runs at a solid 60 frames per second, so it's definitely not a game-breaking flaw. The graphics are just fantastic overall, and they get a 9.5 on 10. Great sound is always a good way to complement great visuals. Dragon's Crown certainly manages to succeed in some aspects of its overall audio, but leaves me wanting in other areas. So let's start with the good. The music is extremely well done. Regardless of what level you're in, the accompanying music is both stellar and fitting. Each stage has its own unique arranged music to accompany it, which manages to match the tone of what's happening in the level. The town music is also perfect as well, as are the different musical accompaniments of different areas of the town. The voice acting is, well, a non-issue. Aside from battle grunts from your characters, there really isn't much voice acting in the game, aside from the narrator. Which brings me back to the notable downside about the game's audio, the narrator. Not only does he sound extremely out of place in the game, but he also manages to be very repetitive and overbearing. It's like you can't move from area to area without hearing his voice chime in on what he thinks you should be doing next. Although helpful in preventing you from getting lost, I feel that the game would have been more immersive and pleasurable without him in it. Thankfully, a recent patch has toned down the instances of the narrator talking, but he's still monotonous and overbearing. With that said, the great music more than compensates for what I feel is mediocre narration. The sound gets an 8 on 10. Dragon's Crown is essentially a 2D beat-em-up RPG hybrid. Core gameplay plays like a 2D beat-em-up, but the leveling and progression system, game length, and hub world are straight out of an RPG. The story is that of your typical fanciful RPG. A certain object is being used to bring about the end of the world, and only you and your allies are capable of saving it. While the story definitely isn't anything to write home about, it did compel me to finish playing, which is definitely a positive. The combat is serviceable, though a tad repetitive. You see, Dragon's Crown starts you off with nearly your entire arsenal of moves from the start. Although this is indeed liberating and gives you a lot to work with right from the start of the game, after the first few hours you're going to be tired of seeing the same moves over and over again. There are some abilities that can be unlocked via the guild, many of which can be used in battle. However, they don't change your overall play experience that much. After a certain point in the game, multiplayer is unlocked. All missions can be played with up to 3 players via Wi-Fi. It works very well and lag is minimal. After completing missions, you have the option of returning to the town to recover, or doing another one straight away with bonuses applied. I found this system to be great since it avoids having to wait for people who want to manage every last item they got on the quest, and rewards you for risking it all on another mission without recovering. Vanillaware also recently announced a cross-play patch for Dragon's Crown, which allows PS3 and Vita players to play together simultaneously. This would add life to the multiplayer of the Vita version if it ever dies down. Dragon's Crown isn't an exceptionally long game. Including my time spent grinding in order to level up, which is mandatory, it took me less than 20 hours to finish the game with one character. However, there are multiple difficulties to unlock, collectibles to collect, and different characters to use and master. Dragon's Crown would certainly not do a disservice to anyone looking for a game to sink dozens of hours into. At the end of the day, Dragon's Crown has solid gameplay. While I do wish that it had deeper and more varied combat, more character progression, and a more involving and original story, it was still fun to play and still get some playtime from me on occasion. The gameplay for Dragon's Crown gets a 7.5 on 10. Dragon's Crown is a fun and beautiful game that really excels on the Vita. With tons of content, multiple characters and difficulty levels, and the upcoming promise of PS3 and Vita crossplay, I suspect that people will be playing this for a long, long time. Overall, Dragon's Crown gets an 8 on 10.